I'm afraid we're going with Jacob for the director position, said Maxwell Bennett, leaning back in his custom leather chair, his corner office overlooking the Boston skyline gleaming behind him. I kept my expression neutral as my fingers pressed, hard against my thigh beneath the polished mahogany table. 5 years at Meridian Defense Solutions, 3 major contract acquisitions, and a complete overhaul of our tactical response protocols, all erased with a single sentence. Jacob has better rapport with the executive teams at Pentagon, Maxwell continued, his voice carrying that practiced, sympathetic tone that never reached his eyes. We need someone who fits the traditional profile they expect. Translation: not. A woman, not a veteran, not me. I see, I replied, my voice steady despite the fire building in my chest. And my technical qualifications? Maxwell, mid-50s, tailored suit that couldn't quite hide his spreading midsection, signet ring flashing as he gestured, gave me what he probably thought was a reassuring smile. Alexandra, your service record is impeccable. Your technical knowledge is beyond question. But this role requires a certain image. Jacob has connections. His father golfed with 3 of our biggest clients. I was 36 now. I'd joined Meridian at 31 after 8 years in the Marine Corps, where I'd specialized in cybersecurity and threat assessment. My final rank was captain. I'd served 2 tours in conflict zones setting up secure communications networks under conditions that would make Maxwell's expensive hairpiece stand on end. I'd rebuilt Meridian's entire security infrastructure, secured 3 government contracts no one thought we could land, and personally designed the tactical operations protocol now used by 7 major defense contractors. But Jacob, with his Ivy League degree and country club membership, was getting the promotion. I understand completely, I said, rising from my chair with the same controlled precision I'd learned in the military. Thank you for your consideration. Maxwell looked relieved, probably expecting the tears or emotional outburst he associated with female employees. We value your contributions enormously, Alex. There will be other opportunities. With some executive coaching on presentation and perhaps a little more flexibility in your approach, you could certainly be considered for advancement in the future. I nodded once, sharply. If you'll excuse me, I have the Richardson brief to finish before tomorrow's meeting. What Maxwell didn't know, what no one at Meridian knew, was that for the past 18 months, I'd been consulting privately with Arcturus Strategic, Meridian's biggest competitor, not sharing proprietary information. I had integrity and respect for operational security, but showcasing my own cybersecurity innovations, designed on my own time, with my own resources. I'd developed a specialized intrusion detection system that could identify potential breaches before they happened, using predictive analytics I'd first conceptualized while securing communications in war zones. When traditional systems waited for attacks to begin, mine anticipated them. It was revolutionary and completely mine, developed off hours, documented meticulously to ensure no corporate claims could be made. 3 days ago, Eliana Vasquez, CEO of Arcturus, had called me personally. Alexandra, we need to talk about your system. It's not just innovative, it's transformative. As I returned to my office, not really an office, more a glorified cubicle with half walls, I saw Jacob lounging against my desk, his expression smug. Harvard MBA, nice smile, completely average skills. While I'd been rebuilding security protocols, he'd been building a network of golf buddies and whiskey-drinking confidants. Tough break, Alex, he said, voice dripping with false sympathy. Max told me you were his second choice. I smiled thinly. Congratulations, Jacob. I'm sure you'll do the position justice. His eyes narrowed slightly, searching for sarcasm and finding none. One thing the military teaches you, never reveal your position until you're ready to strike. Thanks, he said, sounding almost disappointed at my composure. Listen, I could use your help with the Richardson contract. There are some technical aspects I'm not completely clear on. Of course there were. Jacob had been handed the Richardson account 3 months ago despite my 2 years laying the groundwork. The technical specifications were complex, involving integrated security protocols across multiple platforms. I drafted most of it myself. "I'll send you my notes," I replied, sitting down and turning to my computer, a clear dismissal. He lingered awkwardly for a moment. "Great. Appreciate it, Alex. We're still a team, right?" "Always," I replied without looking up. That evening, I opened my personal laptop in my apartment overlooking the harbor. The city lights reflected on the dark water as I drafted a brief, precise email to Eliana Vasquez at Arcturus. "After careful consideration, I'm ready to discuss your offer in detail. Are you available tomorrow evening?" Her response came within minutes. "Landmark Hotel, 7 p.m. The future is waiting, Alexandra." The next day at Meridian passed like a strange dream. I moved through the motions, client calls, security briefings, system checks, while feeling completely detached from it all. Jacob paraded around the office, already redecorating my projects in his mind. Maxwell made a point of stopping by my desk, reinforcing what a valuable team member I remained. I smiled and nodded at all the right moments, while methodically documenting every process I'd created, every protocol I'd established, every system I'd optimized. Not to take with me, I wouldn't compromise my integrity like that, but to clearly delineate what I'd built and what would remain when I was gone. At precisely 5:30, I closed my laptop, tucked a slim white envelope into my jacket pocket, and walked out without fanfare. The Landmark Hotel stood in stark contrast to Meridian's utilitarian office building. All polished marble and soft lighting, it exuded old-world sophistication. I spotted Eliana immediately at a corner table in the lounge. At 52, she was a commanding presence. Silver-streaked dark hair cut in a precise bob, tailored navy, suit, eyes that evaluated everything they saw. "Alexandra," she said, rising to shake my hand. Her grip was firm, confident. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for the invitation," I replied, taking the seat across from her. A server appeared with water and disappeared just as quickly. Eliana didn't waste time on small talk. "Your intrusion prediction system is remarkable," she said, fixing me with an intense gaze. "Our team has been analyzing the demonstration you provided. The accuracy rate is unprecedented." I nodded. "Traditional systems are reactive. They wait for the threat to manifest. In combat zones, that approach gets people killed. We had to learn to read patterns, to anticipate, precisely." She opened a slim leather portfolio and slid a document across the table. "This is our offer." I scanned the pages, my pulse quickening, despite my carefully maintained composure. The title alone made my breath catch: Director of Strategic Security Innovation. The compensation package was nearly double my current salary. But it was the final page that truly stunned me. An equity stake in Arcturus. "You're offering me partnership," I said, looking up to meet her steady gaze. "I'm offering you recognition," she corrected. "Arcturus doesn't need another employee, Alexandra. We need your vision. We need innovation that comes from experience. Most of our team doesn't have. Your military background isn't a liability here. It's precisely why we want you." For a moment, I couldn't speak. After years of having my service treated as an awkward footnote, of being told I was too rigid, too direct, not polished enough, someone was finally seeing my experience as valuable. "We would implement your system company-wide immediately," she continued, "with full attribution to you. The NOAC protocol, named for its creator." I took a slow breath. "When would you want me to start?" Eliana's smile was small but genuine. "How long do you need to give notice?" The white envelope felt suddenly heavy in my pocket. 2 weeks is standard." 2 weeks, then." She extended her hand again. "Welcome to Arcturus, Alexandra." That night, I slept more soundly than I had in years. The next morning, I arrived at Meridian precisely on time, the white envelope now in my bag. Maxwell was late, as usual. I waited outside his office, watching the familiar rhythm of the workday unfold around me. Jacob arrived 20 minutes late, carrying a coffee and looking slightly hungover. He gave me a mock salute as he passed. ID 945. Maxwell finally appeared, talking loudly on his phone about his weekend golf plans. He noticed me waiting and held up one finger in the universal signal for just a minute that always stretched into 15. I remained standing, straight-backed, until he finished his call and beckoned me into his office with a distracted wave. Alex, what can I do for you this morning? He didn't look up from his computer as he asked. I placed the white envelope on his desk. My resignation, effective 2 weeks from today. That got his attention. His head snapped up, eyes widening. Resignation? Is this because of the director position? Alex, don't be hasty. There will be other opportunities. This isn't hasty, I replied calmly. This is the right move for my career. He frowned, opening the envelope and scanning my brief, professional resignation letter. Where are you going? I've accepted a position elsewhere. Maxwell leaned back, his expression shifting from surprise to something almost patronizing. Let me guess. Westridge? Paladin? They're half our size, Alex. Is this really about a title? Because we could discuss Arcturus Strategic, I interrupted, quietly. The color drained from his face. Arcturus wasn't just a competitor. They were the competitor. Twice Meridian's size and growing rapidly. Arcturus? In what capacity? Director of Strategic Security Innovation and Equity Partner. He laughed. Actually laughed. Partner? Alex, be serious. Arcturus doesn't offer partnership to new hires, especially not at your level. I smiled thinly. Apparently they do when they're implementing your proprietary security protocol company-wide. The laughter died in his throat. Your... What protocol? The intrusion prediction system I developed. On my own time, with my own resources. They're calling it the NOWAC protocol. Maxwell's expression hardened. Anything you developed while employed here. I have meticulous documentation. I cut in smoothly. Every line of code, every concept, every test, all time-stamped, all conducted outside of company hours, using personal equipment. My contract doesn't include an exclusivity clause for independent innovations, as I'm sure legal will confirm for you. His jaw clenched. This feels like betrayal, Alex. Does it? I asked, genuine curiosity in my voice. Because from where I stand, it feels like recognition. For the first time in 5 years, someone is valuing what I bring to the table instead of treating my military experience like a liability. That's not fair. We've always what? I asked when he didn't finish. Always acknowledged my technical skills while passing me over for advancement. Always praised my work ethic while giving the credit to others. Always told me I needed to be less intense and more flexible. Maxwell had the grace to look uncomfortable. The director position required... I know exactly what it required, I said, rising from my chair. And I found it elsewhere. I'll spend the next 2 weeks ensuring a smooth transition of my current projects. His face flushed. That won't be necessary. We'll make today your last day. I'd been prepared for this. It was a typical corporate defense. Mechanism, remove the perceived threat immediately. As you wish. I'll clear out my desk. As I turned to leave, Maxwell called after me. You're making a mistake, Alex. Arcturus will eat you alive. They don't want team players. They want results. I paused at the door, looking back at him with something close to pity. That's the thing, Max. So do I. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of contradictions. Despite Maxwell's declaration that I should leave immediately, Meridian's legal department had intervened, insisting on the standard notice period. Not out of respect for me, but because they needed time to assess potential vulnerabilities my departure might create. The irony wasn't lost on me. After 5 years of being undervalued, I was suddenly deemed critical enough to keep under watchful eyes. I spent those days methodically transitioning my projects, documenting processes in excruciating detail, and training Jacob on systems he should have understood years ago. He took my assistance with a strange mix of entitlement and suspicion, clearly wondering why I wasn't bitter about his promotion. "You're being awfully helpful," he remarked on the third day, leaning against my desk as I walked him through the Richardson Security Implementation Plan. Most people would be salty about the whole director thing, then bailing for a competitor. I glanced up from the screen. "I'm not most people, Jacob, and I'm not bailing. I'm advancing my career." "To Arcturus," he said, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Maxwell's been in closed-door meetings with the board all week. Word is they're panicking." "That sounds like their problem," I replied evenly. "Now, about the Richardson implementation, their legacy systems require this custom integration point here." I pointed to the diagram on my screen. Jacob waved a dismissive hand. "We can outsource the technical stuff. What I need to know is what you told Arcturus about our operations." I turned my chair to face him fully, my expression hardening. "Nothing. Absolutely nothing. My integrity isn't for sale, Jacob. The position at Arcturus is based on my own innovations, developed independently." He had the grace to look momentarily abashed. "No offense, Alex. Just looking out for the company." "Of course you are," I said, turning back to the screen. "Now, pay attention. The Richardson contract is worth $8 million, and their CEO won't tolerate errors." The strange limbo continued. My colleagues alternated between treating me like a pariah and desperately pumping me for information. Did Arcturus have plans to poach the Westfield contract? Was their new military-grade encryption as good as rumored? Even Maxwell made awkward attempts at reconciliation, stopping by my desk with forced casualness to remind me of the Meridian family and hint at potential future opportunities if things don't work out. Through it all, I maintained the calm. Efficiency I'd learned in the Corps. Complete the mission. Maintain operational integrity. Never show weakness. Each evening, I'd return to my apartment and spend hours on video calls with Eliana and the Arcturus team, planning the implementation of my security protocol. Their excitement was palpable, their questions substantive and technical. No one asked about my executive presence or suggested I tone down my precision. Instead, they leaned into it, recognizing the value of methodical thinking in security operations. "We've reserved lab space specifically for your team," Eliana told me during one call. "Full autonomy, priority access to the testing environments, and direct reporting lines to executive leadership. No bureaucratic barriers." "My team?" I asked, still adjusting to the reality of the opportunity ahead. "You'll have budget for 6 specialists initially, with room to grow as implementation expands," she confirmed. "I've compiled portfolios of potential candidates, but the final decisions are yours. These people will be carrying out your vision." Vision. The phrase felt foreign after years of having my ideas filtered through layers of managers who claimed them as their own. On the Tuesday of my final week, the Meridian offices were abuzz with tension. Executives hurried between conference rooms, doors closed firmly behind them. Administrative assistants exchanged meaningful glances. Something significant was happening. I maintained my focus, continuing to document the intricate backup protocols I'd established for the government contracts. Around 3 o'clock, Rachel from HR appeared at my desk, her expression unnaturally bright. "Alexandra, do you have a moment? Maxwell would like to see you in the main conference room." I saved my work and followed her through the office, aware of the eyes tracking my movement. The main conference room was reserved for client presentations and board meetings. It was unusual to be summoned there for a routine matter. When Rachel opened the door, I understood why. Maxwell sat at the head of the table, but he wasn't alone. Flanking him were Charles Harrington, Meridian's CEO, and two people I recognized as board members. Their expressions were grave, their postures tense. "Alexandra," Charles said, rising to his feet. Unlike Maxwell, he'd always treated me with professional respect, if distant. "Thank you for joining us. Please, sit down." I took a seat across. From them, back straight, hands folded on the table. Military posture, a habit that had drawn jokes from colleagues but felt like armor in moments like this. "We've been reviewing your contributions to Meridian," Charles continued, his tone measured. "It seems we may have underestimated the scope of your impact on our security infrastructure." Maxwell shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The board members watched me with calculating eyes. "I've always endeavored to exceed expectations," I replied neutrally. Charles nodded. "Indeed. Which is why we'd like to make you a counteroffer." He slid a folder across the table. "Effective immediately, we're prepared to appoint you as Senior Director of Cybersecurity Operations, reporting directly to me. Full autonomy over your department, a 40% salary increase, and accelerated stock options." I didn't reach for the folder. "That's a generous offer." "It's what you deserve," Charles said with a pointed glance at Maxwell. "We should have recognized your value sooner. Sometimes it takes a wake-up call." I maintained my composure, though internally a bitter laugh threatened to escape. A wake-up call. That's what they called the prospect of losing my expertise to their biggest competitor. Not 5 years of overlooked contributions, not countless instances of watching less qualified men advance past me, not the systematic dismissal of my military. Experience as irrelevant. "May I ask what prompted this reassessment?" I asked, knowing the answer but wanting to hear them say it. The board members exchanged glances. Charles cleared his throat. "We've conducted a thorough review of our security protocols in light of your departure announcement. The depth and breadth of the systems you've implemented are, frankly, irreplaceable in the short term. Your departure represents a significant operational risk." "I see," I said quietly. "And the director position recently given to Jacob?" Maxwell interjected. "Jacob would move to Client Relations Director. His strengths align better there anyway." Of course they did. The position they deemed too important for me, requiring the right image and connections, was suddenly perfect for Jacob's strengths. "I appreciate the offer," I said, still not touching the folder. "But I've made a commitment to Arcturus." "Commitments can be broken," one of the board members said bluntly. "We're prepared to cover any penalty clauses in your agreement with them." I met his gaze steadily. "It's not about financial penalties. It's about integrity. I gave my word." "Alexandra," Charles leaned forward, his expression earnest. "This is about your future. Arcturus is offering you a fancy title and partnership. Promises, but we're offering you a real seat at the table here. This is your home." For 5 years, I'd wanted to hear those words. For 5 years, I'd worked tirelessly to earn that recognition. But now, they rang hollow, motivated not by genuine appreciation, but by fear of losing a suddenly valuable asset. Meridian. "Hasn't been my home for some time," I replied calmly. "It's been a place where my military background was treated as a liability instead of an asset. Where I was told to be less direct, less precise, less myself. At Arcturus, they see my experience as valuable precisely because of, not despite, my service." Maxwell flushed. "Your military background has nothing to do with it. We've always supported veterans." "Supporting veterans means recognizing the skills we bring to the table," I countered. "Leadership under pressure, systematic problem solving, unwavering commitment to mission success. Those qualities earned me commendations in the Marines but were labeled as too rigid or lacking finesse here." Charles looked genuinely troubled. "If that's been your experience, then we've failed as an organization. Let us make it right." I stood up, smoothing my jacket. You can make it right by treating the next veteran who walks through your door with the respect they've earned. My decision is final. The air in the room seemed to crackle with tension. Charles looked genuinely regretful, the board members calculating. And Maxwell. Maxwell looked afraid. For the first time, he was seeing me clearly, not as the female veteran he could marginalize, but as a strategic asset walking out the door. "You're making a mistake," he said, an edge of desperation in his voice. "Arcturus will chew you up and spit you out. They don't care about people. They care about results." I smiled slightly. Funny how results suddenly matter when they're walking. Out the door. As I turned to leave, Charles called after me. "Alexandra, your security clearance will be revoked at end of day Friday. Standard procedure." I nodded without turning around. "I understand protocol, sir. Better than most." The remainder of the week took on a surreal quality. Word of the failed retention attempt spread rapidly, transforming me in the eyes of my colleagues from pariah to legend. Junior team members approached, with coffee and questions, seeking advice on their own career paths. Senior managers who'd previously ignored me in hallways suddenly found reasons to engage in conversation. Jacob avoided me entirely, having been informed that his glorious directorship was being reconfigured. I spotted him in heated conversations with Maxwell several times, his face flushed with indignation. On Thursday afternoon, I received a text from Eliana. "Heard about Meridian's counteroffer. Impressed with your integrity. We're ready for you Monday. Your team is eager to meet you." I smiled at my phone, a quiet satisfaction settling in my chest. Not validation from those who'd undervalued me, but recognition from those who saw my worth from the start. On Friday morning, I arrived to find a large box on my desk. Inside was a plant with a card signed by the junior members of the security team. "Thank you for showing us what excellence looks like." I spent the day completing final handoffs, answering last-minute questions, and backing up personal items from my computer. At 4:30, I packed my few personal belongings: the plant, a coffee mug from my Marine unit, a small framed photo of my father in his own Marine uniform from decades earlier. As I prepared to leave, Rachel from HR approached with exit paperwork and a strained smile. "We'll need your badge and any company property." I handed over the badge I'd worn for 5 years. "Everything else is on the desk, inventoried and signed for." She nodded, not meeting my eyes. "There's one more thing." She handed me an envelope. "From Mr. Harrington." Inside was a handwritten note from Charles. "Alexandra, Meridian's loss is Arcturus's gain. Your integrity speaks volumes. If you ever reconsider, my door is open. Semper Fi." At least one person at Meridian understood what mattered. I walked out of the building at precisely 5 p.m., not looking back. The weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying, the constant pressure to be less direct, less precise, less military, lifted with each step. Ahead lay a future where my experience wasn't something to overcome, but something to leverage. My phone buzzed with a text from Eliana. "Dinner tonight? The executive team would like to welcome you properly." I smiled, typing back, "Affirmative." "Time and location?" Her response came quickly. 7 p.m., Bristol Harbor Restaurant. The private dining room is reserved under NOAC protocol. Your name carries weight already. The recognition I'd sought for years had finally arrived, not from those who'd underestimated me, but from those who recognized my value from the start. As I drove away from Meridian for the last time, I didn't feel anger or vindication. I felt freedom. Freedom to bring my full self to work. Freedom to lead without apology. Freedom to be the officer I'd always been, in a company that valued precisely that. Bristol Harbor Restaurant stood at the water's edge, its wall of windows reflecting the sunset in brilliant orange and gold. I arrived precisely at 6:55 p.m., parking my sensible sedan between luxury vehicles that cost more than my annual salary at Meridian. 5 years ago, such surroundings would have intimidated me, a reminder of the corporate world I'd entered after the structured environment of the Marines. Now, I approached with the quiet confidence of someone who finally knew her worth. The maitre d' greeted me with practiced deference. "Ms. Nowak, the Arcturus party is expecting you. Please follow me." He led me through the main dining room, where Boston's elite conducted business over carefully plated cuisine and $100 bottles of wine. The private dining room occupied the restaurant's prime corner, offering panoramic views of the harbor. As the door opened, I was met with something unexpected: applause. Eliana stood at the head of an elegant table surrounded by 7 people in business attire, all on their feet, all smiling, all clapping as I entered. A banner hung across one wall. "Welcome, Alexandra, architect of the Nowak Protocol." "Right on time," Eliana said with approval, stepping forward to greet me. "Military punctuality, one of many qualities we value." She guided me around the table, making introductions. Our CTO, Marcus Wei, CFO, Diana Ramirez, legal counsel, James Chen. Each person shook my hand with genuine enthusiasm, making direct eye contact, offering specific comments about elements of my security protocol they found innovative. "We've reviewed your system architecture," Marcus said, eyes bright with technical appreciation. "The predictive algorithm's integration with the response protocols is brilliant. The way you've configured the threat assessment metrics shows a practical understanding of how attacks evolve in real time that most developers simply don't have." It was jarring after years of having my technical insights downplayed or simplified for broader understanding. Here was a C-suite executive engaging directly with the technical aspects of my work, speaking my language without translation. As we took our seats, Eliana remained standing. "Before we begin dinner, I'd like to make something official." She nodded to James, who produced a leather portfolio and placed it before me. "Your partnership agreement. Effective Monday, you're not just a director at Arcturus, you're a partner with equity stake and voting rights on the strategic direction of the company." My fingers rested lightly on the portfolio as unexpected emotion tightened my throat. "Thank you for the opportunity." "No," Eliana said firmly. "Thank you for bringing your expertise to Arcturus. This isn't charity or tokenism, Alexandra. This is recognition of exceptional talent that another company foolishly overlooked." She raised her glass. "To Alexandra Nowak, whose military precision and strategic insight will transform cybersecurity as we know it." The dinner that followed was unlike any professional experience I'd had before. Instead of superficial networking and political posturing, conversation focused on substantive security challenges, emerging threats, and strategic opportunities. No one suggested I soften my analysis or simplify my explanations. When I spoke, people leaned in, engaged with the content rather than the delivery. "The Nowak Protocol will be our flagship security offering," Marcus explained between courses. "We've already contacted our top-tier clients about early implementation. The response has been overwhelming." Diana, the CFO, nodded. 7 companies have already signed letters of intent based solely on the preliminary overview. The projected first-year revenue is substantial. "Companies like?" I asked, curious about which organizations had recognized the value so quickly. "Eliana?" And Marcus exchanged glances, a small smile playing at Eliana's lips. "Richardson Defense Systems, for one." I nearly choked on my water. Richardson, Meridian's largest client, the account I'd built from the ground up, the one Jacob had been handed despite my years of relationship building. "Richardson," I repeated, carefully. "They're currently under contract with Meridian. Their 3-year agreement expires next month," James, the legal counsel, explained. "They've indicated they won't be renewing. Apparently, they were concerned about changes in the security team leadership at Meridian. The implications settled over me. Richardson had valued my work enough to follow me to a new company, without my solicitation, without my knowledge. While Meridian had been dismissing my contributions, their clients had been noticing. "We didn't poach," Eliana assured me, reading my expression. "Ethics matter at Arcturus. They approached us after hearing rumors of your transition. They specifically asked if the NOAC security architecture would be available through us." A.E. Warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the excellent wine. Recognition, not just from my new employers but from clients who understood the value I'd created. For years, I'd sat silently in meetings while Maxwell claimed credit for my innovations in front of clients. Now, those same clients were following the real architect of those systems. "Of course," Marcus added, "Richardson won't be the last. We've had inquiries from 3 other Meridian clients already." James raised a cautionary hand, "Which we're handling with appropriate ethical boundaries. We're not actively targeting Meridian's client base." "We don't need to," Diana said with a small smile. "They're coming to us." The evening continued with discussions of implementation timelines, team building strategies, and long-term vision for expanding the protocol's applications. As dessert was served, Eliana addressed the practicalities. "Your office is ready," she said. "Corner suite on the executive floor. Your team has been preliminarily assembled based on your specifications, though you'll have final approval. We've acquired the testing environments you requested and set up the secure development infrastructure." I nodded, still adjusting to the reality of being taken seriously without having to fight for it. "How soon can we begin implementation testing?" "Tuesday," Marcus replied promptly. "Monday is for orientation and team introductions. Tuesday morning, you're cleared for full operational status." As the evening wound down, James handed me a security badge and a set of keys. "Building access and office keys. Your biometric credentials have already been loaded into the system. You'll have clearance for all security levels." I accepted them with a nod of thanks. At Meridian, it had taken 3 years to get approval for access to certain secure areas, despite my military clearance and cybersecurity role. At Arcturus, complete access was a day-one assumption. "One more thing," Eliana said as we prepared to leave. "The executive leadership meeting is Monday at 10 a.m. Your input will be expected on the quarterly security strategy." "I'll be prepared," I promised. "I know you will," she replied with quiet confidence. "That's precisely why you're here." As I drove home that night, the lights of Boston glittering across the harbor, a profound sense of rightness settled over me. For the first time since leaving the structured meritocracy of the military, I felt professionally at home. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation. I reviewed Arcturus's current security systems, studied their client portfolios, and mapped integration points for my protocol within their existing architecture. The work was energizing rather than draining, purpose-driven focus rather than the constant uphill battle of proving my worth. Monday morning arrived crisp and clear, the kind of autumn day that showcased Boston at its finest. I dressed with care, tailored navy suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back in a precise low bun. The uniform might be different, but the discipline remained the same. First impressions mattered, especially when stepping into a leadership role. Arcturus's headquarters occupied a sleek glass and steel building overlooking the harbor, modern and imposing against the skyline. As I approached, ID badge in hand, the security guard, a middle-aged man with the unmistakable bearing of a veteran, straightened almost imperceptibly. "Captain Nowak," he said with a nod of recognition. "Thomas Bailey, former Army Ranger. Ms. Vasquez mentioned you were joining us today. Welcome aboard." His use of my military rank wasn't accidental. It was acknowledgement, one veteran recognizing another. "Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Army Rangers, impressive service." "Not as impressive as Marine Cyber Command, ma'am," he replied with a small smile, checking my credentials and returning my ID. "We've been briefed on the NOAC protocol. About time someone brought battlefield-tested security to the corporate sector. I nodded my thanks as I passed, a strange tightness in my throat. At Meridian, my military service had been treated as something to overcome, a potential liability when dealing with corporate clients. Here, before I'd even entered the building, it was recognized as an asset. The executive floor was quiet efficiency, modern workspaces, glass-walled offices, digital displays monitoring global security metrics in real time. My office, my actual office, not a cubicle or shared space, occupied the northeast corner, with views of both the harbor and the city skyline. The door bore a simple nameplate. Alexandra Nowak, Partner, Strategic Security Operations. I paused before entering, unexpectedly moved by the sight of my name with that title. Partner. Equal. Valued. The office itself was impeccably equipped. Dual curved monitors, standing desk option, ergonomic seating, and a small conference area for team meetings. On the desk sat a sleek laptop, a security access card, and a handwritten note from Eliana. "The future of security begins today. Lead the way." At precisely 9:45, a gentle knock on my door frame drew my attention. A young woman with close-cropped hair and attentive eyes stood there, tablet in hand. "Captain Nowak?" "I'm Lieutenant Rivera. Sorry, former lieutenant. Tanya Rivera. I'll be your operations coordinator. Ms. Vasquez thought you might prefer someone with military background as your right hand." I gestured for her to enter. "Former Army intelligence?" A smile flickered across her face. "How did you know?" "The way you hold yourself. Intelligence officers have a particular attentiveness." I extended my hand. "Former captain, Marine Cyber Command. Alexandra is fine here." Tanya shook my hand firmly. "The executive meeting begins in 15 minutes. Your team will be assembled in conference room 3 at 11. I've prepared briefing packages on each team member, military and civilian, backgrounds, technical specialties, security clearance levels." I accepted the tablet she offered, finding precisely organized dossiers on 6 security specialists, 3 with military backgrounds, 3 from civilian sectors, all with impressive credentials. "This is thorough, Lieutenant." "That's what you deserve," she replied simply. "Intelligence preparation of the battlefield. Corporate version." At 9:58, we walked together to the executive conference room. Unlike Meridian, where I'd often been the only woman in leadership meetings, Arcturus's executive team was noticeably diverse. Different backgrounds, different ages, different perspectives, united by evident competence. Eliana nodded to me as I entered. "Alexandra, perfect timing. We were just about to begin the quarterly security assessment." "Before we start," Marcus interjected, "I want to update everyone on the Richardson transition. Their CTO called this morning. They've officially terminated their contract with Meridian, effective immediately. They're paying the early termination fee to accelerate their migration to our platform, specifically the Nowak protocol." A ripple of interest moved around the table. Eliana turned to me. "Alexandra, your insights would be valuable here. Richardson is making a significant investment to access your security architecture sooner rather than later. What's driving that urgency in your assessment?" Without hesitation, I outlined the evolving threat landscape facing defense contractors, the specific vulnerabilities in Richardson's legacy systems, and the protection gaps in conventional security approaches. The executives listened intently, asking substantive questions, engaging with the technical complexities rather than seeking simplified overviews. As the meeting progressed, I was repeatedly called upon to offer analysis and recommendations. My perspective wasn't just tolerated, it was sought out, valued, integrated into the strategic planning. When I suggested a more aggressive timeline for protocol implementation, citing specific threat indicators, Marcus immediately adjusted. "The project schedule. Captain Nowak's assessment aligns with our intelligence," he noted, using my military rank naturally. "We'll accelerate accordingly." By meeting's end, 3 major initiatives had been approved based substantially on my input. As we prepared to adjourn, Eliana addressed the team. As you've all seen this morning, Alexandra brings unprecedented expertise to our security operations. Her NOAC protocol isn't just another incremental security improvement, it's a paradigm shift in threat prediction and response. The board has unanimously approved making it the cornerstone of our security offerings moving forward. She turned to me. Alexandra, your team is waiting. Arcturus is now the home of the NOAC protocol, and we couldn't be prouder. As I left the conference room, phone notifications began chiming across the executive floor. Tanya glanced at her tablet, eyes widening slightly. "What is it?" I asked. "Breaking news in the industry feeds," she replied, turning the screen toward me. Meridian Defense Solutions announces emergency restructuring following the departure of key personnel and loss of the Richardson contract. Stock down 18% in morning trading. I maintained my composure, though something inside me, a part that had endured years of being underestimated and overlooked, felt a quiet vindication. Not because I wished Meridian ill, but because the market was recognizing what Maxwell and his leadership team had failed to see. My value. Conference Room 3 hummed with anticipation as I entered precisely at 11 o'clock. 6 professionals rose to their feet, not out of corporate deference but with the instinctive respect of a team meeting their new commander. I recognized the distinction immediately. 3 stood with military bearing, eyes forward, posture squared. 3 with the more relaxed attentiveness of civilian specialists. "As you were," I said automatically, the phrase flowing naturally after years of service. The former military personnel exchanged subtle glances, recognition of a shared language, an understanding that transcended corporate hierarchies. "Good morning," I continued, moving to the head of the table. "I'm Alexandra Nowak. Starting today, we're tasked with implementing the most advanced predictive security protocol in the industry. This isn't hyperbole, it's reality. What we build here will redefine how organizations approach threat assessment and response." I took a moment to look each team member in the eye. "Lieutenant Rivera has provided me with your personnel files. Your credentials are exceptional. That's why you're here. I don't care about office politics, networking skills, or who plays golf with whom. I care about excellence, precision, and results." A visible ripple of relief moved through the room. These were people accustomed to working in environments where technical brilliance often took a back seat to political maneuvering. For those from military backgrounds, I acknowledged the 3 veterans with a nod. "You'll find my leadership style familiar. Clear objectives, defined parameters, accountability for results, and absolute integrity in execution. For those from civilian sectors, the principles are the same, just without the saluting." That earned a small laugh, breaking the tension. "Questions before we dive into the protocol architecture?" A man with salt and pepper hair and the unmistakable bearing of a career military officer raised his hand slightly. "Commander Thomas Hayes, retired Naval Cybersecurity Division. Will we be operating under classified protocols given the nature of clients like Richardson?" I nodded, appreciating the direct question. "Yes, all team members will require minimum secret clearance, which I understand you all currently hold. Certain aspects of the implementation for defense contractors will require top secret. Those of you without current TS clearance will begin the upgrade process this week." A younger woman with sharp eyes and quick movement spoke next. "Amelia Chen, formerly NSA Cryptography. Is the core algorithm of the NOAC protocol based on your work with predictive pattern recognition in theater operations?" "Correct," I confirmed. The fundamental insight came from tracking communication patterns during deployment. Enemy combatants change tactics, but underlying behavioral signatures remain detectable if you know what patterns to monitor. The same principle applies to cyber threats. For the next hour, I outlined the protocol architecture, fielding increasingly technical questions from my new team. No one asked me to simplify or make it more accessible. No one suggested we focus on how to explain it to clients, rather than perfecting the technical implementation. This was a room of specialists speaking the same language, focused on excellence rather than optics. By session's end, assignments had been distributed, implementation phases mapped, and a testing schedule established. As the team gathered their materials, I addressed them one final time. We begin full implementation tomorrow at 800. This is not just another corporate initiative with arbitrary deadlines and marketing-driven milestones. This is a mission with real security implications for our clients. I expect precision, dedication, and integrity in execution. Any questions? My door is open. Dismissed. As they filed out, Tanya remained behind, tablet in hand. The team is impressed, she noted. Especially the veterans. Word about your background was circulating before you arrived. My military service? I asked, gathering my notes. That, and how Meridian treated it as a liability rather than an asset. She met my gaze directly. Many of us have been there, Captain. Companies that claim to value military experience but actually want us to unlearn everything that made us effective. I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. The military teaches precision, direct communication, and outcome-focused execution, qualities, often at odds with corporate cultures that prize political navigation over actual results. Arcturus is different, I observed. They recruited me because of my background, not despite it. Ms. Vasquez has 3 veterans on the executive team, Tanya confirmed. She believes military experience creates leaders who prioritize mission, success over personal advancement. As we walked back toward my office, Tanya checked her tablet again. The Richardson CTO has requested a meeting with you this afternoon. Apparently, he has concerns about the transition timeline. Schedule it, I replied, and pull the complete architecture maps for their current implementation. I want to be prepared. She nodded, making notes. Also, Maxwell Bennett from Meridian has called twice asking to speak with you. He wouldn't state the purpose. I raised an eyebrow. Interesting. Hold those calls for now. And finally, she added as we reached my office, Ms. Vasquez would like you to join her for the investor briefing at 4. The board wants to highlight the NOAC protocol as Arcturus's competitive advantage for the coming fiscal year. My first day as a partner wasn't even halfway complete, and already the stark contrast with Meridian was overwhelming. There, I'd fought for years to have my expertise recognized. Here, it was the centerpiece of company strategy. The meeting with Richardson's CTO, Dr. Alan Mercer, began precisely at 2 o'clock. He arrived with his chief security architect, both looking harried and concerned. Captain Nowak, Dr. Mercer began, foregoing typical corporate pleasantries. I'll be direct. We've terminated our contract with Meridian specifically to implement your security protocol. Our military partners are demanding enhanced protection after the breach at Westfield last month. I nodded, having followed the Westfield situation closely, a defense contractor whose systems had been compromised, potentially exposing classified project specifications. However, he continued, our operations team is suggesting a 6-month transition timeline. That's unacceptable given current threat levels. I need to know if your protocol can be implemented more rapidly without compromising effectiveness. Instead of offering reassurances or making promises I couldn't keep, the typical corporate response, I opened my laptop and pulled up the Richardson system architecture I'd helped design during my time at Meridian. Your current implementation has 3 critical vulnerability points, I said, highlighting areas on the diagram. Here in the legacy authentication protocols, here at the data warehouse interface, and here in the cross-platform communication channels. Dr. Mercer leaned forward, eyes sharpening. This is precisely what I tried to discuss with the new director at Meridian. He kept steering the conversation back to client relations and communication strategies. Jacob lacks the technical background to address these vulnerabilities, I stated matter-of-factly. He's a relationship manager, not a security architect. Exactly, Dr. Mercer said with evident frustration. Which is why we're here. Can your protocol be implemented faster than 6 months? I assessed the diagrams for a moment, mentally mapping integration points against potential friction areas. 90 days for the core components that address these 3 vulnerability points. Full implementation in 4 months. I'll oversee the transition personally. The relief on his face was palpable. That's what I needed to hear. Someone who understands both the technical requirements and the operational urgency. As they prepared to leave, Dr. Mercer paused. You know, we requested you specifically for our account at Meridian 3 times over the past 2 years. Each time, we were told you were too valuable in your current role to be reassigned. I kept my expression neutral, though the revelation stung. I was never informed of those requests. I assumed as much, he replied. Their loss is our gain. Captain, we look forward to working directly with you now. After they departed, Tanya appeared in my doorway. Maxwell Bennett is on line 3. 4th call today. He's becoming insistent. I considered ignoring him entirely, but military discipline prevailed. Face problems directly. Don't leave potential threats unaddressed. Put him through. Maxwell's voice came through the speakerphone, sounding strained. Alexandra, thank you for taking my call. I've been trying to reach you all day. I've been in meetings, Maxwell. What can I do for you? We need to talk, he said, an unfamiliar urgency in his tone. The Richardson situation. It's creating significant problems. The board is asking questions. I imagine they are, I replied. Evenly. Richardson was your largest client. They left because of you, he said, accusation creeping into his voice. They left because they valued my security architecture and followed it to its new home, I corrected. I didn't solicit their business. A pause, then a forced change in tactic. Look, Alex, water under the bridge. We made mistakes in how we handled your contributions. I'm calling because we'd like to discuss a consulting arrangement. I blinked, surprised by the audacity. A consulting arrangement. Just to help us manage the transition with remaining clients, he hurried to explain. The board has authorized a substantial consulting fee. We're talking mid-6 figures for 6 months of part-time advisory services. The desperation was evident now. Meridian was hemorrhaging value and scrambling to stop the bleeding. Maxwell, I said calmly, I'm a partner at Arcturus with equity stake in the company. I'm overseeing implementation of my security protocol across multiple major clients. I have neither the time nor the inclination to help Meridian manage the consequences of its own decisions. Alexandra, be reasonable, he urged. This isn't just about Meridian. Think about the employees whose jobs are at risk if we lose more clients. People who were your colleagues for years. It was a low tactic, attempting to use my sense of responsibility against me. If you're concerned about your employees, perhaps, you should focus on valuing the contributions of those who remain rather than trying to rent the expertise of those you drove away. A heavy silence fell. The board would like to meet with you, he finally said. Charles, specifically. Name your terms. My terms are simple, I replied. I'm not available for consulting with Meridian. I wish you and the company well, but my focus is on building something new, not repairing what's broken. Goodbye, Maxwell. I disconnected the call, feeling strangely unburdened. For years, I'd worked to earn recognition and respect at Meridian. Now that they were finally offering it, not because they valued me, but because they feared the consequences of losing me, it meant nothing. At precisely 4 o'clock, I joined Eliana in the executive briefing room where 12 board members and major investors had gathered. The atmosphere was energized, confidence evident in the relaxed postures and engaged expressions. Alexandra, Eliana welcomed me. Perfect timing. We were just about to discuss the security division's strategic advantage for the coming year. She gestured for me to take the seat at her right hand, a position of prominence that would have been unthinkable at Meridian, where I'd often been relegated to the back of the room during investor presentations. Ladies and gentlemen, Eliana addressed the room, many of you have read the preliminary briefings on the NOAC protocol and its potential impact on our market position. Today, you'll hear directly from its architect, our newest partner, Alexandra. NOAC. As all eyes turned to me, I felt a momentary flash of the old anxiety, the one that had followed me through Meridian, where executive presentations meant dumbing down technical concepts and avoiding language that might make me appear too specialized or not relatable enough. But the faces watching me weren't seeking simplified analogies or watered-down explanations. These were shrewd investors and experienced board members who expected substance, not performance. For the next 20 minutes, I outlined the core innovations of my security protocol, its implementation strategy, and projected market impact. I spoke precisely, technically when needed, strategically when appropriate, without once feeling the need to soften my delivery or apologize for my expertise. When I finished, the questions came rapid-fire, intelligent, probing, focused on substance. Not once did anyone ask about how we'll explain this to clients or suggest I was being too technical. They engaged with the content on its merits, recognizing the competitive advantage it represented. The protocol's predictive capabilities are unlike anything currently on the market, observed an older gentleman who'd been introduced as the former Defense Department cybersecurity chief. Captain Nowak has essentially brought military-grade threat assessment to the commercial sector. That's a game changer. Another board member leaned forward. Richardson terminated a long-standing relationship with Meridian specifically to access this protocol. What's to prevent our other competitors from developing similar capabilities? 2 factors, I replied confidently. First, the core algorithm is patent protected. Second, and more importantly, the protocol isn't just code. It's an approach to security that requires both technical implementation and strategic deployment. Both aspects are based on battlefield-tested methodologies that are difficult to replicate without similar experience. Eliana nodded. Which is precisely why Alexandra isn't just implementing a system for us. She's building and leading a team that will expand these capabilities across our entire security division. As the meeting concluded, board members approached to introduce themselves personally. Several were veterans themselves, easily identified by their bearing and direct communication style. One, a former Marine general, clasped my hand firmly. "Captain Nowak," he said with the quiet authority of command, "your work honors the Corps. Bringing battlefield wisdom to civilian protection, there's no worthier mission." I straightened instinctively. "Thank you, sir." "No sir needed here. Captain, we're peers now, partners in Arcturus." He smiled slightly. "Though some habits of respect never quite leave us, do they?" "Nor should they," I agreed. As the boardroom cleared, Eliana approached with an air of satisfaction. "The board is impressed, as I knew they would be. The NOAC protocol is already being factored into next quarter's projections. Your team briefing went well?" I nodded. "They're exceptional. Implementation begins tomorrow." "Excellent." She checked her watch. "One more thing before you go. Financial Times is running a piece on the Richardson transition and the emerging talent war in cybersecurity. They've requested a statement from you." I raised an eyebrow. "From me specifically?" "You're the story, Alexandra," she said simply. "The brilliant security architect whose innovations were undervalued until a competitor recognized what they were missing. It's a narrative that's gaining traction throughout the industry. The idea was unsettling. I'd spent my career focused on the work, not the recognition. I'm not interested in publicity for its own sake. Nor am I suggesting it," Eliana clarified. "But there's strategic value in establishing your protocol as the gold standard in the industry. Your name attached to it creates powerful branding. She was right, of course. In the corporate world, perception shaped reality just as surely as technical capabilities did. I'll provide a statement focused on the protocol's capabilities and our implementation vision, I conceded. But I have no interest in criticizing Meridian or discussing my departure. Eliana nodded with approval. Professional discretion, another military quality I admire. She checked her phone as a message appeared. Interesting. Maxwell Bennett is in the lobby, insisting on seeing you. Security has detained him. I exchanged glances with Eliana, surprised by Maxwell's audacity. He came here? Physically? She nodded, a hint of amusement in her eyes. Apparently, your phone conversation left him unsatisfied. Security protocol requires your authorization before allowing a competitor's executive access to our floors. The old Alexandra, the one conditioned by years at Meridian to accommodate, to smooth over conflict, to put others at ease, might have felt obligated to see him. But that version of me was fading with each hour at Arcturus, replaced by a leader who understood the value of boundaries. Tell security to inform Mr. Bennett that I'm unavailable, I decided. If he wants to schedule a proper meeting through official channels, he can contact my office. Eliana nodded approvingly. Done. And Alexandra, your first day as partner has exceeded expectations. The board is already discussing expansion of your division based on client interest in the protocol. As I walked back to my office, Tanya fell into step beside me, tablet in hand. Security reports that Mr. Bennett was quite insistent. He claimed it was a matter of critical importance to national security clients. I shook my head, recognizing the manipulative tactic. Maxwell wouldn't know a critical security matter if it compromised his own email. It's a transparent attempt to create urgency where none exists. Agreed, Tanya said with military crispness. Also, 3 more team members have been assigned to your division based on this afternoon's client commitments. Their dossiers are being prepared for your review. We reached my office, where the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Boston Harbor. In just one day, I'd experienced more professional respect and recognition than in 5 years at Meridian. The contrast was both vindicating and sobering, a reminder of how long I'd accepted less than I deserved. One last item, Tanya said, checking her tablet. The Financial Times reporter has submitted specific questions regarding your transition. From Meridian. They're particularly interested in why Richardson followed you to Arcturus. I considered this carefully. Public criticism of Meridian would be easy, and perhaps justified, but ultimately unprofessional. Prepare a statement focusing on the technical advantages of the NOAC protocol and Arcturus's commitment to implementation. No mention of Meridian's internal decisions or my reasons for leaving. Very good, she replied, making notes. Will you be needing anything else this evening? I glanced at the stack of implementation plans awaiting my review. No. Thank you, Lieutenant. After she left, I stood at the window watching the harbor lights begin to illuminate as dusk approached. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Alex, it's Jacob. Maxwell is losing it. Board emergency meeting all day. Richardson cancellation triggered contract review clauses with 3 other clients. Need to talk to you. Please. I stared at the message, feeling an unexpected twinge of sympathy. Jacob was out of his depth, promoted to a position beyond his capabilities, now facing the consequences of decisions he hadn't made but was accountable for. It wasn't personal malice that had put him in the director position over me. It was an entrenched system that valued the wrong metrics. After a moment's consideration, I texted back, "Can't help with Meridian's internal matters. Focus on what you can control. Document everything." His reply came almost instantly. "They're blaming me for Richardson leaving, saying I didn't maintain the relationship properly. But it was your security architecture they wanted. What am I supposed to do?" The irony wasn't lost on me. Jacob had been promoted for his supposed relationship skills over my technical expertise, yet now was being blamed when relationships couldn't compensate for technical inadequacy. "Tell the truth," I responded simply. "Clients value substance over style in security matters. Always have." No further messages came. I returned to reviewing implementation plans, losing myself in the precise technical specifications that had always been my strength, the very strength Meridian had treated as a liability. At 7:30 p.m. AE, gentle knock at my doorframe pulled me from deep concentration. Eliana stood there, coat draped over her arm. "Still working?" "It's your first day," she observed, though I should have expected nothing less from a Marine. I smiled slightly, closing the file I'd been reviewing. Old habits. There's a lot to accomplish before tomorrow's implementation begins. "Indeed," she agreed, entering my office. "But there's something you should know before you leave tonight." She took a seat across from me, her expression serious. "Maxwell Bennett was removed as Vice President of Operations at Meridian this afternoon. The board called for his resignation following the Richardson cancellation. The news landed with unexpected weight. Maxwell had been an obstacle, certainly, but I'd never wished for his professional destruction. That seems extreme for losing one client." "It wasn't just Richardson," Eliana explained. "Apparently, your departure triggered a broader review of Meridian's security operations. The board discovered that several key client relationships were dependent on systems you'd personally designed, systems that Maxwell had repeatedly claimed credit for in board presentations." I leaned back, processing this information. "How do you know this?" "Boston's executive circles are smaller than they appear," she replied with a slight smile. "Charles Harrington called me directly. He wanted to ensure there were no misunderstandings between our companies." "Meaning?" "Meaning Meridian understands that poaching their clients would be ethically questionable, but accepting clients who choose to follow your expertise is entirely legitimate." Her eyes held a steely determination. "We didn't engineer Maxwell's downfall, Alexandra. His own actions did that. The same actions that failed to recognize your value until it was walking out the door." The symmetry felt almost too perfect. The man who had dismissed my contributions now dismissed himself for that very mistake. Yet victory, if that's what this was, tasted more complex than I'd imagined. "What happens to Meridian now?" I asked, surprised to find I still cared. "Charles is taking direct control of operations temporarily. Jacob has been moved back to client relations." She studied my expression. "You feel conflicted. Don't. This isn't about revenge. It's about natural consequences. Excellence will always find its proper place eventually." As we walked out together, the Arcturus building still hummed with activity despite the late hour. Teams of engineers and security specialists worked with focused intensity, the environment reminiscent of military operations centers where mission always came before clock watching. "Tomorrow," Eliana said as we reached the lobby, "the real work begins. Your protocol implementation will set the standard for the entire industry. Are you ready for that level of visibility?" I nodded, the weight of the responsibility familiar rather than daunting. In the Marines, we had a saying, "Pressure is a privilege." It means you only feel pressure when you're doing something that matters. She smiled approvingly. "I can see why the Corps valued you so highly. Arcturus is fortunate to have inherited their good judgment." As I drove home that night, the city lights reflecting off the harbor waters, I reflected on the day's revelations. Maxwell's fall from grace, Meridian's scramble to salvage what remained of their security division, the accelerating interest in my protocol across the industry. None of it felt like victory in the traditional sense. It felt like alignment, the world finally recognizing value that had always been there, hidden beneath layers of corporate bias and outdated thinking. My apartment felt different somehow when I returned, or perhaps I was the one who had changed. On my desk sat the commendation medals from my military service, displayed in a simple frame. Excellence in the field. strategic innovation under pressure, leadership during critical operations. For years after joining Meridian, I'd kept them, tucked away in a drawer, learning the hard way that what earned recognition in the military could trigger insecurity in corporate settings. Tonight, I moved them to my bedside table, a reminder of who I had always been, regardless of how others perceived me. The next morning broke clear and cold, autumn asserting itself across Boston. I arrived at Arcturus at 0700, a lifetime of military punctuality impossible to break. To my surprise, most of my team was already there. Workstations active, implementation plans spread across monitors. "Morning, Captain," Commander Hayes greeted me, the military address coming naturally in our shared context. "Teams ready to begin protocol implementation. We've established the secure testing environment and initialized the baseline vulnerability assessment." I nodded approvingly. "Excellent initiative, Commander. Where do we stand with the Richardson integration specifications?" "Complete and verified," Amelia Chen replied, pulling up detailed schematics on her screen. "I've identified the critical integration points and mapped the authentication protocols. We can begin Phase 1 implementation by 0900. The day unfolded with the precise coordination of a well-executed military operation. Each team member operated with clear purpose. Technical discussions remained focused on solutions rather than politics, and progress moved steadily forward. By midday, we had completed the initial security architecture for Richardson's systems, work that would have taken weeks amid Meridian's bureaucracy and relationship-focused meetings. At 1300, Tanya appeared with lunch for the team, another military-influenced courtesy that recognized mission focus sometimes superseded personal needs. "Ms. Vasquez would like a progress update when convenient," she informed me quietly. "Also, Financial Times has published their article on the industry. Shift, you're featured prominently." She handed me a tablet with the article displayed, "Security Paradigm Shift: How One Veteran's Innovation is Reshaping Cybersecurity Standards." The piece was surprisingly technical, focusing on the predictive capabilities of the NOAC protocol, rather than corporate drama. My statement appeared prominently, emphasizing Arcturus's commitment to implementing military-grade security across civilian applications. A sidebar highlighted my Marine background and specialized cybersecurity experience, treating it as a qualification rather than an anomaly in the corporate world. Most intriguing was a quote from Charles Harrington, Meridian's CEO. "Captain Nowak's contributions to cybersecurity innovation are exceptional. While we regret her departure from Meridian, we recognize her protocol represents a significant advancement for the industry as a whole." A graceful acknowledgement, and a public admission of Meridian's error in judgment. The afternoon brought a succession of client meetings, each following a similar pattern. Technical leaders seeking reassurance that the NOAC protocol could address evolving threats, executives concerned about implementation timelines, and security teams eager to understand the predictive methodology. In each case, my direct, technically precise explanations were met with respect, rather than the familiar requests to make it more accessible or focus on the big picture. At 1600, Tanya knocked on my office door, her expression uncharacteristically hesitant. "Captain, there's someone here to see you. Jacob Evans from Meridian." I raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Jacob? Did he say why?" "Only that it's urgent and personal," she replied. "Security has verified his identity and confirmed he's alone. He's waiting in the first-floor conference room." I considered the request. Unlike Maxwell's demanding approach, Jacob had followed proper protocol, requesting a meeting through appropriate channels. "I'll see him. Please escort him up." 5 minutes later, Jacob entered my office looking like he'd aged years in a single day. His typically perfect appearance was disheveled, his expression strained. Alexandra. Thank you for seeing me." He remained standing awkwardly until I gestured toward a chair. "I won't take much of your time." "What brings you to Arcturus, Jacob?" I asked directly. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I'd never seen from him before. "Everything's falling apart at Meridian. Maxwell's gone. 3 more clients have initiated contract reviews. The board is in permanent emergency session." He looked up, meeting my gaze. "And they offered me your old job." I waited, sensing there was more. "I turned it down," he continued, his voice quieter. "I told them I'm not qualified, that I never was, that they should have promoted you years ago." The admission clearly cost him, his pride visibly wounded. "That's surprisingly self-aware, Jacob." He gave a humorless laugh. "Being set up to fail has a way of clarifying things. I was never meant to succeed in that role. I was a placeholder, someone who wouldn't challenge Maxwell's authority or outshine him technically." He shook his head. "But that's not why I'm here." "Why are you here?" I asked. Jacob reached into his jacket, removing a flash drive. "This contains all the security audit reports from the last 3 years, the ones showing your systems repeatedly identified and prevented breaches that would have cost millions. The ones Maxwell buried because they validated your approach over his." He placed it carefully on my desk. "There's also documentation showing you were the actual architect of the Richardson security implementation, not the team effort Maxwell claimed in board presentations." I stared at the drive, understanding immediately what it represented. "You're giving me ammunition." "I'm giving you recognition," he corrected. "Too late, from the wrong person, but still, the truth matters." I left the drive untouched. "Why now, Jacob?" He met my gaze steadily for perhaps the first time in our professional relationship. "Because when everything was falling apart today, I realized something. You were right all along, not just about security protocols, but about what really matters in this business. Results, integrity, actual expertise instead of relationship theatrics." He stood to leave. "I'm resigning from Meridian. Thought you should know." As he reached the door, I called after him. "Jacob." He turned, expectant. "Thank you for this," I said, indicating the drive. "It took courage." A ghost of his old confident smile appeared. "Well, I did learn something from you after all, Captain." After he left, I sat quietly for a long moment, contemplating the flash drive and all it represented. Evidence of what I'd always known but couldn't prove. Validation that might have changed everything if revealed years earlier. Yet strangely, it no longer seemed to matter. The vindication I'd once craved had been superseded by something more significant. The opportunity to build something new. Something that truly reflected my values and expertise. I placed the drive in my desk drawer without reviewing its contents. The past was the past. My focus needed to remain on the future I was building at Arcturus. That evening, as implementation of the NOAC protocol progressed across multiple client systems, I received a message from Eliana. "Board meeting tomorrow, 0900. Expansion of your division approved unanimously. The NOAC protocol is officially the cornerstone of Arcturus's security strategy moving forward." I smiled, feeling a profound sense of rightness. Not smug satisfaction or vindication, but the simple peace of being exactly where I belonged, doing exactly what I was meant to do. 3 months later, the NOAC protocol had been successfully implemented across 17 major client systems with a waiting list of organizations seeking priority implementation. My division had expanded to 32 specialists, with a dedicated military veterans recruitment program that recognized the unique value of battlefield-tested expertise in cybersecurity operations. The Financial Times ran a follow-up piece titled, "The Veteran Advantage: How Military Experience is Reshaping Corporate Security," featuring Arcturus's success as a case study in the value of military-trained leadership in civilian contexts. Meridian had stabilized under Charles Harrington's direct leadership, pivoting to focus on smaller clients while rebuilding their security division. They'd hired 3 veterans in senior technical roles, a public acknowledgement of the lesson they'd learned too late with me. On a crisp December morning, I arrived at Arcturus headquarters to find Eliana waiting in the lobby, an unusual deviation from routine. "Change of plans this morning," she informed me. "The Pentagon delegation is arriving early for the security briefing. They're particularly interested in potential military applications of the NOAC protocol." My eyebrows rose. Military applications? The protocol was inspired by military operations, not designed for them. "Precisely why they're interested," she replied as we walked toward the executive elevator. "Your innovation bridges the gap between military experience and civilian applications in a way they find intriguing. The delegation leader specifically requested you conduct the briefing personally." As the elevator doors opened on the executive floor, I caught sight of the delegation already assembled in the main conference room. 5 high-ranking officers in formal uniform, accompanied by civilian, technical advisors. Eliana paused before we entered. "The delegation head is General Mason. He's the director of cybersecurity operations for the Joint Chiefs. Exactly the kind of role you might have aspired to had you remained in the Corps." I straightened instinctively, military bearing returning, without conscious thought. Interesting timing. Her eyes held a knowing look. Perhaps, or perhaps it's simply the natural progression of excellence finding its proper audience. As we entered the conference room, the military officers rose in unison. General Mason stepped forward, his bearing unmistakable, his gaze direct and evaluating. "Captain Nowak," he said, extending his hand. "Your reputation precedes you. The NOAC protocol has generated significant interest within defense circles." I shook his hand firmly. "Thank you, General. Though I should clarify, I'm no longer on active duty." "Once a Marine, always a Marine," he replied with the faintest hint of a smile. "Some things never leave you, like the instinct to identify threats before they materialize, which is precisely why we're here." The briefing that followed was unlike any client meeting I'd conducted at Arcturus. The technical questions were precise, the strategic considerations sophisticated, and the potential applications immediately apparent to everyone in the room. No one asked me to simplify my explanations or focus on relationship building instead of technical precision. My military background wasn't something to overcome. It was the very reason they were listening. As the session concluded, General Mason addressed the room. "The NOAC protocol represents exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need, security architecture that anticipates threats rather than merely responding to them." He turned to me directly. "Captain, your contribution to cybersecurity extends beyond corporate applications. We believe it has significant potential for national defense implementation." Eliana stepped forward. "Arcturus is prepared to discuss partnership arrangements for military applications, General." "Excellent," he replied, his focus remaining on me. "We'd like Captain Nowak to lead that partnership personally." After the delegation departed, Eliana and I returned to my office, the implications of the meeting still unfolding between us. "A Pentagon partnership," she observed. "The NOAC protocol will become the standard not just for corporate security, but for national defense. That's quite a legacy, Alexandra." I stood at the window, looking out over Boston Harbor, the same waters I'd gazed at from Meridian's offices 3 months earlier. The view was similar, but everything else had changed. "Not the legacy I imagined when I left the Corps," I admitted. "But perhaps the one I was always meant to build." Eliana studied me thoughtfully. "You know, when we first approached you about joining Arcturus, some board members questioned whether your military background would be compatible with corporate culture." She smiled. "I told them it wasn't about making you fit our culture, but about recognizing when our culture needed to adapt to exceptional talent." The contrast with Meridian couldn't have been clearer. There, I'd been asked to soften my edges, to be less precise, less direct, less military. Here, those very qualities had been recognized as strengths from the beginning. The difference, I said quietly, is between a company that asks you to be less than you are and one that challenges you to be more than you thought possible. My phone buzzed with a message from Tanya. Richardson implementation complete. All security metrics exceeding baselines. Team awaiting your inspection at 1100. Another mission accomplished. Another system secured. Another validation of the expertise that had always been there, waiting for the right environment to flourish. I turned from the window, ready to continue building what I'd started. Not a replacement for my military service, but an extension of it, bringing battlefield-tested precision to civilian protection. A bridge between two worlds that needed each other more than either realized. Ready for the next phase? Eliana asked, recognizing my shift in focus. I nodded, feeling the familiar calm certainty of purpose. Always. In the months and years that followed, the NOAC protocol became the industry standard for predictive security, protecting everything from corporate data to critical infrastructure. My division grew into a full-fledged subsidiary, employing dozens of veterans whose military experience was valued as an asset rather than treated as a liability. Meridian eventually reorganized and stabilized, though never regaining its former market position. Charles Harrington occasionally reached out with professional courtesy, acknowledging the lesson his company had learned at significant cost. Maxwell Bennett left the industry entirely, later writing a surprisingly insightful article about the dangers of prioritizing style over substance in technical leadership. He never mentioned me by name, but the reference was clear enough to those who knew the story. And me? I found my place at the intersection of military precision and corporate innovation, creating systems that protected what mattered while building teams that valued what I'd always been: direct, focused, excellence-driven, and unapologetically shaped by my service. The day my boss laughed when I quit became a distant memory, far less important than the day a CEO called me partner, recognizing value that had always been there, just waiting for the right eyes to see it. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever been undervalued, overlooked, or asked to be less than you truly are, remember that recognition doesn't always come from the places we expect. Sometimes the greatest gift others can give us is underestimating what we're capable of, pushing us to find those who see our true worth. Your value doesn't diminish because someone fails to see it. Like a protocol waiting for the right implementation, you simply need the right environment to thrive. If you found meaning in Alexandra's journey from undervalued to unstoppable, please subscribe to our channel. We share stories of resilience, recognition, and reinvention each week, reminders that sometimes the path to success isn't about changing who you are, but about finding those who value you exactly as you are. Because the most powerful moment in any career isn't when others finally see your worth. It's when you refuse to wait for their permission to claim it.